Hey guys, just finished watching The Flash, Season 5, Episode 7. Oh come, y'all, ye thankful. This episode was an interesting, very, very interesting episode. It's episode 99. Next episode is the episode 100, which looks pretty interesting for the episode. It's really going to be cool to kind of see that. It looks like it really kind of a celebration of all the episodes, right, so far. And this episode is quite interesting to see is how things kind of go in this. It kind of feels like, if you think of it basically, it feels like a filler episode, but if you go deeper inside of it, it's more than that. It's a filler episode, yet they still have flashbacks to Cicada's kind of origin throughout this episode, so you kind of get a feeling to them. They find out at the end of the episode who he is, and who exactly he is and stuff, and I think that was really interesting with that. But it's kind of like they push the story into like a background in the episode, and then they have this other storyline as the foreground. So the foreground episode, the main storyline in this episode that they deal with is kind of is a filler storyline, and then you have a background one where something's different. I think that's kind of interesting playing with that. I like how things were doing with that. I think that was kind of interesting, kind of playing with that. I think it was really cool, kind of seeing as to how things went. I mean, we start off the episode, and Barry kind of is so close to Cicada. He doesn't really realize it right until the end of the episode, or he never really realizes it, but he was kind of mere feet away from Cicada, and I think that was really interesting dealing with that. And Cicada doesn't know that Barry Allen is the Flash, at least not yet, so I think that would be cool to kind of play with that as things kind of move on from this season. So we see that Caitlin in this episode, we find out she's able to talk to Killer Frost at will without having the mind, that mind tech thing that just go ahead to let Cecile read people's minds and stuff. And I think that's interesting. They're able to kind of control it. She'd be able to just pop up whenever she wants throughout this episode, so that was kind of fun seeing that. We see the Cicada's daughter is actually his niece in this episode. That was really cool. Like I said, seeing that origin kind of for him was kind of a really fun thing to feel with, and it was kind of interesting dealing with their relationship, and they're actually kind of giving one of these characters, kind of humanizing them a lot more, and I kind of like the way they're doing that, kind of making you feel for the character, and it really is a better villain for this season. So we see that Barry, in this episode, he actually ends up dying when they find out they see some power plants kind of overloading and shocking. Electricity is going everywhere. He dies, and Nora has to kind of bring him back to life by shocking him, and bringing him back up. And I think that was kind of interesting, dealing with that and kind of playing with that whole storyline in this episode, with Nora kind of, worried about Barry throughout this whole episode. The fact that, he just leaves her type thing, and he does all this stuff, risking his life every day, but no kind of tell for how things are going to go with that, like no kind of regard for, what he's going to leave her with, what he's leaving Iris with, with nothing, with just leaving, right, and risking his life every day for that. And I think they should have brought in Joe West for this episode, especially with him being a cop and stuff. They really could have brought that in, and even Cecile too, and stuff. I mean, no, she's more of a DA and stuff, but still, it would have been interesting to bring in Joe dealing with that situation. Maybe Joe, and that's how part of this is his, getting into Joe's relationship with Iris's actual mother. I think that could have been an interesting kind of thing, playing with that. What was it like for Iris, kind of growing up with Joe as a police officer this whole episode? What was it like for Barry? Barry touches upon that a little bit here and there, but at the same time, yes, he grew up with Joe, but he also, at the time, he was he was 8 or 9 type thing, or was he 7 or whatever? He was still, he still had a few years living with Henry Allen and Nora Allen. So when he moves to there, he still sees Henry Allen as his father type thing when he first moved as a kid. So I think that would be something interesting to have played with, kind of with Joe as a detective, as a father, going out there and as a police officer and putting his life out there. And I think that is kind of something that they need to kind of to play with and stuff, just to deal with those situations and stuff. And I think that would have been interesting to get, Iris' opinion on that, and different situations that Barry's that Joe's been into, and how he deals with that. How did he deal with that when Iris and Barry got, worried about him, I think that would have been something interesting to kind of bring him in upon that storyline. And I think it would have been interesting to him to give his opinion on that, rather than just the one-liner with Barry, that would like to go into a little bit more into that. So that was kind of interesting, dealing with that throughout this whole episode, and how they kind of finished it off at the end was kind of fun seeing that too. So we see that Weather Witch, she's the one we're dealing with throughout this whole episode. She's trying to free her father, and then we find out she's actually trying to kill her. And they had kind of Iris in this kind of Oculus Rift type thing, doing like a motion capture, like a holographic version. I'm like, why didn't they just get Ralph to just kind of shapeshift into the guy so that he could actually get close enough to get to her, and then when they think that she's gonna take off with her, he could just kind of steal the staff right from her, if he's like, oh, let me see that, and he's Ralph, right? Rather than kind of imagine it's a holograph. We saw when she dropped the Hummer on him, it went right through him, right? It's a holograph. So I just don't know why they had to go through all that complicated stuff with the technology and not just get Ralph Didney to kind of shapeshift into Weather Wizard type thing, and have him kind of actually play him so you can actually physically touch him and know that he's actually there, right? So I think that was kind of a bit weird. I don't know why he wasn't in this episode. Was he even in the beginning of this episode? I don't think so. I don't remember seeing him in this episode, so I think that's just it was kind of weird not seeing him there, and especially for that one scene, he would have been perfect for that one scene. So I think it would be cool to kind of see where things kind of go with all that. So we've seen Oro kind of wants to stop being the Flash, and again, I think it would have been really cool to see Joe West being a part of that storyline, and helping her deal with that, and finding out, maybe he could have helped Barry to say, what did he tell, Iris and Barry when he was young, when they were worried about Joe West's safety. And I think that would have been something cool to kind of play with, and I think it would have been something interesting to kind of to see how things kind of really go in this storyline. I think it would have been something interesting to kind of play with, and I think it would have been something cool to kind of dive deep into seeing how that, because Joe West totally would have had to play with that, if not someone else, he knows would definitely have to play with that. And if I'm not mistaken, I forget how, what really was the original reason that Joe split up with Iris's mother, and Wally West's birth mother. But I think that would be something interesting to see how things were going. That I know she had problems and stuff, but I think it would have been cool to kind of play into something like that if that was this case and stuff. Maybe I need to recheck that out as to what is the exact reason why she left. But Joe's definitely probably dealt with that. He's probably dealt with that, not just with Barry and Iris, maybe in dating throughout the years. Someone just couldn't handle that. I think that would be something interesting to kind of play with. Maybe you could say that he tried to date someone and everything was going good until that one time, and they just couldn't handle that thing. I could see that totally being an interesting storyline to kind of play with throughout this episode, but they kind of dropped the ball with Joe West here. So we see at the end of this episode, we see Weather Witch kind of does a lightning tornado, and I think that was just so cool. And the first thing I thought about it when they were doing it, and Barry was running around the whole thing, the lightning tornado, and he had the magic wand stuff, the Harry Potter wand from a few years ago, and he had to, absorb some of the electricity. First thing I thought of was Wally West in the end of, well, I guess spoiler alert, but Young Justice. So, spoiler alert for Young Justice Season 2, if you haven't seen that in a long time, because it's coming out, Season 3 is coming out pretty soon, but the end of that, spoiler alert, is Wally West does something pretty similar like that and then disappears. So I think that's something that's pretty interesting like that, and I think that's really going to be cool. I would really thought of that. I was like, oh wow, but obviously they're not going to do that here. We still have one more episode, and then we have the crossover, so I think that really was going to be something interesting to see as to kind of where things going with that. One thing I did thought of was at the beginning of this episode when Barry kind of was killed off, somewhat died, and I thought, oh, maybe is this where he's going to be dead? He's going to be out of this episode, out of the next episode, and then into going into the crossover, so that he can have, I think that would make more sense for them to kind of somehow put Barry out of commission for the episode just before the crossover, so that Grant and Gus can have that much more time to film the crossover, right? While the show is filming episode 8, they could be most of the rest of episode 7 and episode 8. He could be filming episode 9, and then he could be filming other, the Arrow version of the crossover, or vice versa, and different sides of things. And I think that would have made a little bit more sense. It would have been quite interesting to deal with that. But we didn't have that, so it's really going to be cool to see him in this whole thing, in the whole series, to where things kind of go with that. And then we see at the end of we see the trailer for the next episode is the 100th episode. So this episode is episode 99, next one's episode 100, and it's titled, what is it titled here? what's past is prologue, and I think that's really going to be interesting to see. It looks like Sherlock sent Barry and Nora to the past, where he gets to deal with all the different villains and stuff, and I think that's really going to be cool to see as to kind of where things go with that. And if I'm not mistaken, with Flash being the end of the crossover and the end of the last episode before the crossover, hopefully there'll be some sort of a huge cliffhanger setting up for the crossover, and I think that'll be really fun to see that. We might get it a bit maybe on Supergirl, since that'll be the beginning of the crossover, or we might get some sort of tease as to going into the crossover from all of the shows, because if you're only watching, you're only watching The Flash, you're only watching Arrow, you're only watching Supergirl, whatever, I guess not Legends, because they're not part of this crossover, so you don't need to see the crossover, but I mean, they kind of should have a tease to it, maybe probably in between, like as a commercial, to just put the actual crossover right in the episode. But I think it's really going to be interesting to see. They need to have a huge cliffhanger in all the episodes going up into the episode, so that they can actually be like, hey, if you're only watching this episode, you might want to go watch Supergirl first, then Arrow, then Flash, and then have certain things continue on there. I think that's really where they need to do it, so that people realize as to where things are going to go. Next episode to continue on, Supergirl or Flash, whatever, so that, if you're only watching the one show, you want to go watch the crossover, come back, and then keep going, right? So I think that's really going to be interesting to see, is to kind of where things go for the next 100th episode. I guess I would kind of be like, it would be cool to see some Arrow characters in there, but they might not, although, actually, they could show up at the end of the episode, setting up the thing for the crossover, and I think that could be something interesting, dealing with something like that. Maybe they have a quick one-liner or something with Oliver Queen or something. I don't know. What it could be interesting to see is if they have some sort of Arrow characters over there. I could see maybe Diggle or someone like that being over here. Maybe it's the one that is not going to be in episode 8 of Arrow, but will have been in episode 8 of the Flash as a flashback. I think that could be something kind of fun playing with that. It could be quite interesting to see as to kind of where things kind of go for that in the 100th episode. So we'll see how this goes. It's kind of interesting that it's the episode just before the crossover, so to see how much we should get at least at the end of the episode some sort of connection, some sort of tease to the crossover, and starting us on that crossover to tell you, go watch Supergirl next. Don't jump into episode from 8 to 9 of The Flash, because you'll become completely lost because it's the end of the crossover, and you'll be completely spoiled. But go back and watch Supergirl first, then Arrow, then Flash. And I think that is really going to be interesting to see as to what sort of beginning of that they kind of do that, or does them going back in time doing this have any effect on that? That could be quite interesting, although I think last time they keep on having Flash as the main start off point. I mean, there was a Dominators. Flash was the first one to find the Dominators. The Crisis on Earth X started all off with the Flash wedding, so I think it's going to be interesting to see if maybe someone else, different show being the starting, point of it, since the first episode. I think that would be the way to kind of do it. I mean, it doesn't matter if Supergirl is the first episode. I think that was the same last year, but having sort of Barry and the Flash being the first team that finds out about this problem, I think that's really going to be interesting to see as to where things go with that. But based on the trailers, I think it's going to be to see. It looks like hopefully it's kind of, we get it from everyone's perspective. There's no main character, it wasn't like in Dominators, it was a Flash. I figured found them out first, and they took down Barry's wedding, in the second crossover. So in here, it'd be interesting to see maybe things start off on Supergirl or on Arrow. We'll have to wait to see as to where things kind of go in the next episode 8 for them. So let me know where you think these are going to go. Let me know some things you need to see in the episode 100, and how do you think things are going to go. And hopefully it'd be cool to see if Ronnie Raymond shows up. Maybe they can get him to come back. I think it'd be really cool. Maybe some Victor Garber could come back. That would be kind of fun. Definitely Robbie Amell would be something really interesting to see that. That could be quite interesting to see as to kind of where things go. It would be interesting to see if they get Jay Garrick back, get Hunter Zolomon, I forget the actor's name. I did see him in a trailer for a Netflix show, so maybe they didn't get him. Who knows? But maybe John Wesley Shipp needs to be in that episode. We obviously know he's supposed to be in the crossover, so hopefully we get to see a bunch of him in this episode. Maybe as Jay Garrick, as either Jay Garrick, Henry Allen, all of those. I think that would be really cool seeing him again. I think it would be really interesting to see a bunch of those characters from the original show. Would be quite fun. So let me know what you think, guys, about this episode in the comments below. Where do you think things are going to go for the 100th episode? What are things you need to see? And I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace out.
I'm Captain America, here to talk to you about one of the most valuable traits a soldier or student can have.
Subscribing.
Sometimes subscribing is the key to victory. Sometimes it leads to very little, and it seems like it's not worth it. And you wonder why you waited so long for something so disappointing. How many more of these?
You're still here.
Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, guys. Peace.
It's over.